Yeah. All right.
All right. Okay. So in terms of academics, it's set up a bit differently from Holy Cross, and it's a bit of a transition to that, and now it's a bit of a transition back. But so it's typically, first of all, your classes are a year long. There are some semester long options, but they're kind of rare. And so you have your classes for a year. You also take 4. And then rather than having like 2 or 3 lectures a week that we're used to at Holy Cross, where it's kind of like a mixture of lecture and also class participation, there you'll have typically a 1-hour lecture once a week, and then a 1-hour class. That is so the lecture is all about, you basically sit down for an hour and get talked to, and then the class is all about your readings and participating. And so sometimes those are taught by PhD students at the college, and I've also had one of mine was also taught by the lecturer too. So you get a chance to get to know some of those PhD students, and but it is it's set up a little bit differently than we're used to at Holy Cross. Not to mention that in terms of assessment, typically the way they do it is, for my classes, my exams were at minimum 70% of my grade and at most 100% of my grade. And so the way that they do assessment for study abroad students is you have 2 grades. You have your assessment grade, which is completely your exams, and also any like term papers that you might have. And then there's a class grade, which is all participation. Both those grades show up on your LSE transcript that you get at the end of the year in terms of like A minus, all that. And they have like a way to kind of transpose because they have first, which is 70 and up, which is an A, and then upper second, which is 60 to 69, then 65 to 69 is like an A minus. And so they have like a system, because you're going to be graded like, oh yeah, here you get a score of like, I think my first exam, I got a score of like 67. And you look at that coming from the US and you kind of have a little like heart attack where you're like, right, oh, I guess I should just fly home right now. But a 67 there is an A minus. And so it's a little bit of a transition. It's also a little bit of a transition in that professors definitely care. They definitely make themselves available, but there's less kind of check-ins throughout the year. Like you're held much more responsible to. They're trusting that you're keeping up with the readings. They're not taking attendance at lectures. And also all the lectures are recorded, so you don't have to go to any of the, I mean, I would recommend going. I kind of felt like I didn't go all the way to London to sit in my room and watch a lecture. And now I'm really glad I didn't, because I'm kind of sick of doing that now. But
Will, can I interrupt you on that and just
yeah, of course,
a little more? I mean, I think in some ways Will is even underestimating the difference. It couldn't be more different. At Holy Cross, you get regular check-ins. You know, you get a number of assessments. You might have to do, I don't know, if you're in political science, you might have to do a report on your readings, or, you know, there'll be quizzes or whatever. They'll give you maybe questions to think about the reading before you read and stuff. There's none of that, right? And as Will said, there's nobody telling you that you have to do anything. So if you don't hit the ground running and you don't dig into your studies yourself, you're not getting any assessments or anybody telling you how you're doing. So you could think, well, I don't know how I'm doing. So you have to bring your Holy Cross work ethic with you to LSE and work just as hard, even though you're not having to run from class to class or do one assignment after the other. You have to be doing that for yourself. And it's really key that you know that from the beginning and that you follow that from the beginning. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. In terms of check-ins, it's kind of limited. In one of my classes, we had problem sets once a week. In one of them, they weren't even required, but you could do them if you wanted feedback. So again, it was kind of your prerogative. The only other kind of feedback I had in my classes was once or maybe twice per term, they might have us turn in what they call like a formative assessment, which is like a paper that doesn't count at all towards your grade. They can't even really force you to turn it in, but if you want feedback, like that's the time to do it. And so I know a lot of American students just kind of treated that as, you know, it's not going to affect your final grade, but it is a good way to get that kind of feedback. But now I think I almost like over time got used to it, and now coming back to Holy Cross, I'm realizing how often Holy Cross professors check in, or like, I don't know, I'll get up on a Thursday and be like, I had this class 2 days ago. Like, why am I going again? Like it is very different and very much like up to you to kind of stay on top of it. So if you're the kind of student that's very self-motivated and can kind of swing that, it's a really good thing. I would say the other kind of positive is that, which I think is a little different from Holy Cross, is that let's say one course has like a really heavy workload, then you can kind of say, okay, well, I'll push my readings for another class 2 days forward, and I'll get all this done, and then I'll be able to. So if you're able to kind of like block out your time well and really and kind of set almost arbitrary deadlines for yourself to get things done, then those classes that you show up to and you have to like the entire hour is just you and maybe 7 other students participating with a PhD student. And if you're in there with 6 other British kids, the British kids don't even talk. They don't care. It doesn't affect their grade at all. And so it really is, as an American, you just want to like get over there and like do your readings, be on top of it. You know, the other thing too is that a lot of the other American students there have never heard of Holy Cross before. And so you kind of like, I know that Graydon, who's the other guy who went, we kind of felt a little bit of a burden to kind of show everybody, both, you know, Brits and then also Americans, kind of like what Holy Cross is all about. And so it's a cool opportunity. So yeah, but it is a lot of work. Again, it's hard for me to kind of speak to actual assessments because all my assessments were obviously moved online, which, you know, brought around its own challenges and advantages, I'm sure. Yeah, so it's hard to speak on that, but it was kind of fun. About like we had like 3 weeks of classes or something when I ended up coming home after our big break. And there's like an April break that's about 3 weeks to 4 weeks. People typically use it to travel, but it's also the most important time to get a jump start on your final exams. Because again, those final exams carry weight not only for that semester, but for the entire year because you've been taking that class the entire year. So there, you kind of get to that point and there's a lot of course material to cover. And that's the same time that you have term papers coming in. And so there's a lot happening, but
correct me if I'm wrong, Will, but there is only one comprehensive final exam for the whole year. That's right, isn't it? In most courses?
Yeah, typically. So it's a combination of either, like, for example, like I took a public policy course. So like first semester was like micro policy, second semester macro. So we had like a January exam that was like 50% and a final exam that was 50. Another one of my exams, just 100% of your grade, no questions asked. And then a couple other, it was 70% was your final exam in May or June. And the other 30% was a term paper. So it's all of which, and the term papers were written, you know, also in like April and May. So it's very, you can get away, and I don't recommend this, but that's the thing, is that you can get away with not doing very much for a long time before anybody calls you out on it. And by that point, it's kind of too late. I don't want to like, I think that Holy Cross students, and especially if you have the GPA that you have and you're interested in this program, then you're probably going to carry some of that work ethic with you. So, but I think it is important to get a good jump start on your classes and just stay on top of your readings. Because that's the thing, is it is very like, at least my classes were very like reading heavy. And so you have a lot to read every week. And so it's good to show up to class with questions, and because that's really your opportunity to participate and get feedback on whatever interpretation you have on your studies.
It's also really important that you take good notes, because you're going to be responsible in most of your classes for material you had and studied in October. You're going to be responsible for that at the end of your term, which is in early June. Is that right?
Yeah, they kind of span from like, I think last year it's a long exam period. I think my first exam was May 12th and I was done June 10th. So it kind of varies, but I kind of felt like I was in finals mode for about 3.5 weeks. So it was a little stressful, but I mean, I can't understate though, like how great of a program it is. I was able to make really good study groups with, especially other general course students that were in, I think, yeah, in all of my classes, I think I had at least 2 general course students who I got to know. And they do a lot to get you to know, or you get to know a lot of other students there who are American. And and I think that was the other benefit of living at Bankside, which is the name of the dorm I was living in, because you're surrounded by a lot of Americans. And of course, it's really great to be able to meet people from other countries. I did a lot of that too, and I'm still in touch with a lot of them. But it's nice to be able to kind of network with American students who are in like a similar situation and just kind of form study groups. And that really became useful, especially when we all got sent home. And, you know, I'm taking classes with like an 8-hour time difference, and I needed to like stay in touch with classmates. So, but I mean, the big thing that they do right off the bat is like your second day there, there's like a boat cruise on the Thames for all the study abroad students. So they really do a lot early on to make sure that you know your classmates. And yeah, I met some really great people and some really great people to study with too, which is also really important.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the good things about being at LSE or Oxford is that I don't know what kind of high school you went to, but you're no longer necessarily the smartest person in the room. And it's cool to be smart, and people expect you to be smart. So, and it's good natured, but you know, I won't say judged, but people notice that if you're smart or not, and most people are. So it's really fun, and as Will said, good networking for the future. I just want to come back again and just elaborate a little bit on what Will said already very clearly, but just to drive the point home. And that is, everyone I've talked to who's returned from LSE has said just what he did about not putting things off, not procrastinating, even though you have the opportunity to do it and no one's going to check you on it. One of the students who went in the first year, we send students, said that he did do that because he traveled a fair amount. And he said, I would never do it again. He said, the amount of work that I had to do at the end was just non-stop, 7 days a week, no pause, nothing. I just had to make it up. And he ended up doing well. He was a smart guy, or is a smart guy. But you really don't want to put yourself through it. It's not worth it. So I just want to hammer that home. So we talked about accommodation. That you live in a number of places. The other thing only thing that I would add to that is, again, in the first year, one of the students lived in private accommodation, so non-student housing. And he felt that he was a little out of the loop when it came to socializing and seeing other people, and also some of these study things that Will's been talking about, study groups. So we strongly recommend that you live in on campus, not on campus, but in LSE housing, because you just come in contact with a lot more students that way. So we talked about housing. We talked about the academics, that they're rigorous but self-motivated and driven. We've talked about all the ways that, or some of the ways that LSE integrates you into the culture. There's I think something like 128 societies. That's what they call clubs. So there's a lot of clubs on campus, and Holy Cross will reimburse you up to $200 for your membership fees in those societies. And those are also good networking. Is there anything that's like a general admission to lectures and things on campus, or are those just free?
Yeah, so you can show up to, first of all, you're allowed to show up if there's room in the actual classroom. You're allowed to show up to any lectures that you want, but there's also a lot of guest lecturers as well that come to campus. And most of those are free. It's just a matter of getting tickets. Like a lot of those tickets go really fast. Like I know that Thomas Piketty, the very famous economist, he spoke at LSE last year because he had a new book coming out, and tickets went immediately. So it's more of a difficulty of because I guess when you have like 10,000 economics
Right.
students or related subjects, like they're going to know who that is because he was associated with LSE too. But there are a lot of opportunities like that, but they do go quickly. So I think something that I kind of put off participating in a lot of like campus activities like that, but they do send out like a newsletter. When I say they, I mean, there's a dean for the general course, and he sends out a newsletter every week called Tembo. And it has all kinds of opportunities, and both in the general course and also just general through the school in general. And so there are a lot of opportunities on campus, and you can kind of participate in those as you choose. I kind of decided to. I didn't do a ton of traveling. I went to Berlin for a weekend, and I went to Vienna for a weekend. I had more plans in April, but those got destroyed. And it's something that this is kind of on a different note, but it's something that Brit actually said to me before I went abroad, and he recommended that I really get to know London first, because that's where you're living. And so it did feel, and I completely focused on getting to know London. And there are people who they travel almost every weekend because flights are cheap and you can go a lot of places, and that's great. But I really kind of emphasize getting to know London. Like, it's by the end you have like such an intimate knowledge of like the tube map. You can get anywhere. You really know where you're going. You start, tourists will approach you and ask for directions. It's really funny. Then they hear you have an American accent. They get extra confused. But I guess, I know it's on a very different note, but I think that Britt made a really good point to me last year that I just want to like repeat, that get to know London first.
I did not pay him to say this, but he's so right. He's so right. I mean, look, folks, you can travel later in life a lot, right? What you probably won't be able to do later in life is to live in a city and make it your own, and a country too. I would expand it to all of England. And you know, so if, for example, if you're in London and somebody starts talking about Wales and you've been there, then suddenly you're not the common American anymore. You know, you know their country. And it's really that ability to integrate into your host country that's most important, and with your host citizens and fellow students. So what happens when you go abroad is that when you get there, you are perceived of as the other, you know, right away. Even though you speak English, it's very clear that you're an American. So you are going to be single-handedly responsible for electing Donald Trump, and all you eat is McDonald's, right? So they're going to have a certain image of you that's going to make you the other. And gradually, I mean, you may have some cliched notions of the Brits as well, or the other international students. But gradually, as people get to know you, you become what the Russians call svой человек, which means sort of one of us. You become theirs, right? And as you do that, you enter into their way of thinking. And what happens is you change. Your perspective grows. That's one of the most important things that you can do in study abroad, is get that ability to be culturally fluent in a place that's not yours by birthright. So when you get that perspective, the British perspective, you will look back on your own country and your own history, and you will see it differently. It's interesting that you went to Vienna, Will, because I studied there for a year when I was your age. And I remember when I got to where I was fluent enough to read the newspaper, I would say, oh my God, this country is and they write about the US, I said, that's not my country, all right? And then, are you smiling because I said this last year, or are you smiling because it happened to you?
Well, I just generally, I think that the point you made about being held responsible for every little political thing. I mean, luckily, I just would push it back, because, you know, Brexit was happening and Boris Johnson was got a majority. And so whenever they'd come at me for Trump, I'd be like, well, you know, look at your situation. Like, you're not exactly I don't know, or you just call them imperialist and they
Right, right.
and they fold. Uh,
But anyway,
that was a big one.
yeah. When I was not that we aren't either, but anyway, um, once you start being able to read, I said, that's not my country they're describing. No. And then gradually I'd have this sort of, ooh, maybe it is. Oh, ah, I need to rethink this, right? And it's really exciting and really, really rewarding to get that perspective. But to come back to Will's point, which evidently originally was my point, that if you're traveling all the time, you don't get that perspective because you're not around people, you're not making friendships, and if you travel, I had a kid who went to Oxford one year, a smart guy, and I invited him to come to the information session. He said, "Oh, I traveled to 12 countries while I was away." And I was like, oh, just the wrong message. I didn't want to say that. So I said, "Where did you go?" And he got to number 3 and he couldn't remember anymore. It was like he had to think, where did he go? So when you're traveling on the weekends like that, it's what my colleague at Study Abroad, Chris Van Booten, calls a selfie moment, right? You go to the Eiffel Tower and you take a selfie at the Eiffel Tower, or you go to Oktoberfest and join arms and sing Ein Prosit and take a selfie, or whatever it is you want to go. But it is such a superficial experience of culture. It is like a selfie, very superficial, right? So when you get to know a place really intimately, it's so empowering also. I mean, London is one of the world's great cities culturally. Museums are free. You walk in, you get, I have a special place in the National Gallery, which is a particular room, and they have this Fra Angelica painting and Uccello painting from Florence from the 15th century. And then just go in and look at them for a half an hour or 20 minutes and walk back out, or take a larger tour. There's so much to do, so much music and everything, that it's to actually, as Will said, to be able to get on the subway, the tube, and know where you're going, not need a map, walk from one place to another, make that city your own. Wow, is that really empowering? It's just an amazing, amazing experience. And what it is, as Chris said at the general information session, it makes you incredibly more independent and self-confident. I can't tell you the number of students who come back, I mean, in the hundreds, who come back from abroad and said, I studied abroad for the year. I can do anything. I can take on anything. So it's hard work. It's difficult at the beginning in particular when you're making adjustments, but it is one of the most rewarding things you'll ever do. I mean, my study abroad experience was transformational in my life. I went to Vienna and became a German professor. So anyway, that's that. So do you guys have any questions? Don't be Holy Cross shy now. Come on, we're a small group.
I would just say, as far as, like, I know you were talking about how rigorous the academics were. Do you feel like you had enough time to, like, really enjoy, like, being in a different country and, like, getting out enough, or do you feel like you were spending, like, most of your time studying?
That's a good question. I definitely had enough time to have fun. I spent plenty of time in pubs. I was able to go to a few football matches, which is just amazing. I think that is one of the big cultural things that you can do. And you can go to a Premier League game, but also I went to like a second tier game in like a really not great part of South London, and people there were terrifying, but it was a really fun culture experience. So I felt like I was able to do a lot. Kind of what I said before, I found that I would plan out my week a little bit and say, like, okay, well, I know that my friends and I want to go to a club that is pretty popular with like Americans, like with really good live music on Thursday. So on Thursday, we'll go do that. And so if whatever work that I would be doing Thursday, I'll do Wednesday or whatever. So I found that it was pretty easy to plan out. But when I think back, I did spend time in the library, but what I really try to do is I would walk to campus and then have like a class and then like a few hours off. And I would just really hit the books during the day and then try to, in the evenings, have like a more relaxed dinner with my friends, go out to a pub. And, sometimes that work would bleed in. Like you have times and you're just like, yep, I got to write an essay. Yep, I got to do readings tonight. Sorry, guys. But I really found that by basically saying, all right, I'm not walking back to my dorm until I finish my work for the day. It was a really good strategy. And so I would have like class at 9, work 10 to noon, have a lecture noon to 1, like work 1 to 5 with some friends on campus. And then we would all walk back together and get dinner and then go out to a pub or whatever. So I found that I think that'd be my biggest piece of advice is you're going to have work, but if you get it done during the day, then your evenings are really freed up to have a lot of fun and your weekends are too. But I was able to do a lot in the city. I never really felt like I was stuck. I guess I didn't feel like I only saw the inside of a library for the entire year. Like I definitely was able to do a lot. I did a fair amount of traveling within England, which I definitely would recommend. Like I went to Dover, I went to Stratford upon Avon and Oxford and Stonehenge, Bath, Liverpool. And it is kind of fun too to go to those places because it is a totally different vibe than London, completely different. But I definitely feel like I was able to stay on top of my studies and also do a lot and make the most of that experience, but it did require a lot of planning and it did require a lot of work where it was basically like, okay, during the day, if I'm not in class or getting a coffee at Pret, I'm sitting in the library getting work done so that tonight I can go out to the pub.
It's a great strategy. I say to students, most of you have had a job during the summer where you work from 9 to 5 or whatever. You need to think of your school days as work days. And you spend the whole day doing work. It's also really good discipline, right? To be able to sit down and just work and get it done, right? Also bear in mind, I'll tell you a story from a student who went to Oxford and he was in the honors, Holocaust honors. And I was presenting Oxford to the sophomore honors students and he was in the group and it was, I don't know, however many there are a lot, students. I'm up in front in the hall, in the auditorium and the director of honors is there. And I said, actually it was Will. I said, Will, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience at Oxford? And he says, oh, it was amazing. He said, you'd be surprised how much shit you can get done when you're not jumping through all these effing hoops. I was going, oh, but it's true. There's not a lot of this, this stuff that you do at Holy Cross, which is part of what makes Holy Cross Holy Cross. But here you're going to be much more on your own device. You're going to have a lot of time. And if you use it well, you'll be able to do a lot. So I would second that. Any other questions? Elise, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So I was going through the LSE website and I saw that like there's an opportunity for you to have like on-campus jobs or even internships. Do you know what the process for that is like, or if you had any friends that did any jobs or internships while they were studying at LSE?
Great question.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was aware of the program. I didn't know anybody who actually did it. I think the general attitude was that you're very busy with your studies, and I think a lot of students kind of wanted their time as either their own to explore London or their own to be a part of societies. But I remember hearing about that early on, but I don't think it's something that is very often taken advantage of. But if it's something you're interested in, I would definitely encourage you to pursue it. And I do remember that that's something that they would talk about in that weekly newsletter Tembo. And so they definitely give you that information as it comes. But yeah, I think the general consensus was that students kind of wanted their time outside of their studies to be their own.
Yeah, it is also, however, nice to earn some pounds, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not cheap. London is not cheap, and the
And the
exchange rate.
exchange rate is rough.
Yeah. So you have to think of, so I wouldn't encourage anybody to work for more than 8 hours a week, but, if you're getting paid 15 pounds an hour and you work for 8 hours, well, you guys are the economists, you can do the math. It's nice pocket change, but if you work more than that, I think it's going to really limit, it's either going to cramp your studies or it's going to cramp your ability to do things in the city and whatnot. So, but yeah, pursue it, run it down. It's a good question.
Yeah, I have friends who they had like jobs, like I know one, she like nannied for a while and then around weekends, and then I know another classmate of mine worked as like a receptionist at a gym. So like some over time some students do pick up jobs, but for most don't. I mean, to Brit's point, London is very expensive between just prices are higher there, but also the exchange rate while I was there was like $1.30 is equal to £1, and that 30 cents on the dollar like really adds up. So I mean, you don't need to be horribly frugal about it. At least through the residence halls, you get a dinner 5 nights a week, and then I think it's dinner 5 nights a week, and then a brunch on Saturdays. And so you do kind of get food through the school like that, which I found saved me a lot of money. But honestly, maybe the best thing for my bank account was getting sent home 3 months early. But yeah, so it can get expensive. So I think jobs would be something to look into. And I think that if I remember correctly, my BRP, which is like your long-term visa, allows you to have like up to 20 hours a week. And you're not going to touch that number anyway if you want to actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the options are there.
Yeah, good. I think the way to think about the expense of it is that even though the pound is $1.30, its buying power is roughly the equivalent of $1. So what costs $1 here is going to cost $1.30 there. So that's not an exact science, but that gives you an idea that it's going to be more expensive than living in the States. And the other thing to say about the board there is you would pay, if you're only getting 5 days a week, one meal, I think you'd pay like a quarter board. So the money that you would normally pay to Holy Cross for board, you don't pay. So that's the money that you would have to spend on food. And if you're on almost full financial aid so that you really don't pay that, then you get a stipend from Holy Cross to cover the food.
Yeah, I don't want to like overshare, but at least with my financial situation, I was able to get a refund for both terms that definitely allowed me to pay for a lot of my food. So that helped too. But I guess it depends on your financial aid package.
Yep. Other questions, folks?
So just to be clear, is there not a dining hall? There's just food through the residence hall?
It is a little bit weird. So on the ground floor, it goes G1, 2. Ground floor is like floor 1 here. So on the ground floor, you walk in, and then on the left, there's like it's a very small dining hall. It's pretty much a line that you get in, and they have like 4 different options. One is always going to be vegan or vegetarian. And you get like, they're very adamant about this. You get 2 pieces of fruit, 1 piece of bread, an entree, and a dessert or something like that. They're very adamant about it. And then they have like a small kind of like eatery area. So the food is pretty good. I mean, it's not the best food you're ever going to have. I mean, they do curry right, I'll say that. But, sometimes the food was a little bit hit or miss. I mean, often like Holy Cross can be sometimes, to be perfectly honest. But it was decent, and it was another really great way to socialize with other people. And like you pretty much end up having standing appointments with your friends. Like, yeah, we're all going to get dinner at 6:30 every night. But but it is going to be through through your residence hall. But the other cool thing too is like if somebody visits or you go to somebody else's dorm, you can buy a meal pass for like £5 or something like that. So it's it isn't as like large scale as we're kind of used to at Holy Cross, where there's like one dining hall, just because all the residence halls are scattered across London. But yeah, it works. It's fine. I liked it.
Other questions?
Yeah. So in terms of like course credit and fulfilling requirements, was it kind of difficult to pick your courses, or would you say like most of the classes that you could take there would fulfill some sort of like economics requirement?
That's kind of one that you have to go through with your professors. I think that it's Professor Goshchang, who, I don't know if that's changed, but
Oh, that's good.
yeah. And so I started, after I got accepted, I started kind of looking at courses, and I just kind of contacted Professor Goshchang and asked like which courses would count for what. So I took 3 economics courses there, which is the maximum number. They only allow you to take 2 econ courses abroad to count, but for LSE they made an exception and said 3. So I took like economics and public policy, which is a 200 level at LSE, economic history, like British business performance after World War II, which was a 200 level, and then history of economic theory, which was a 300 level there. Typically, a course that's a 300 level abroad in either economic history or economics or management or something, if you're going to take econometrics, that is going to, I think the only 200 level that I can think of that would be count as a 300 at Holy Cross would be like management 212, which is econometrics, which is a really difficult course that I would caution against taking just from hearing about it. But typically like a 200 level economics course at LSE is going to count for a 200 level credit at Holy Cross, and a 300 is going to count for a 300. So I took, and that's something that Professor Goshchang can kind of talk about too with you, but I was able to communicate with him pretty early on. I understood like what was going to count for what. So I was able to take a 300 level and then also 2 200s, which I will say, like, aside from the 300, the 200s didn't really help me advance towards the major. Like, you know, the way it works in econ is that you need 4 electives. One has to be a 3, one can be a 200, and at least 3 have to be 300s. And so I took, aside from the 300 level, the 200s didn't technically really help me advance towards the major since I'd already taken African economies. But I guess it really is a matter of if you want to go to LSE and if you want to get like some really particular knowledge on a subject. So I would say that LSE and the experience of going abroad is much more geared towards expanding on your knowledge and your specific interest and getting really in depth with economics more than it is about being able to advance towards the major. I mean, I was able to take care of a 300 level, which is nice now that I have to take 2 300s now that I'm a senior, which is very doable. But, you know, they're not going to let you take the equivalent of like quant macro or quant micro abroad. You need to take care of the theory courses at Holy Cross.
Let me interrupt you there for a second.
Yeah, sure.
I think you should definitely have both micro and macro theory under your belt before you go. I think it would be really not good to go without those 2. In fact, it may even be required. So see what you can do. Elias, are you in micro or macro theory now?
Yeah, I'm in micro now, and I plan to take macro next semester.
That's good. How about you, Ainsley?
Yeah, I'm in micro right now, and hopefully macro next semester.
Good. So the normal rule in the economics department is that if you have micro theory, you can take an upper level elective and a lower level elective abroad. The way it works with LSE is you can take 2, I think 3 courses towards a major. I don't know. I think it can be 2 lower level and 1 upper level. The thing that's important for you guys to know is the 18 course rule. So you can take as many economics courses at LSE as you want, and they will only, the 3 will count towards your major. but the rest will count towards your graduation. But the trick is you have to have 18 courses outside your major. And if you're a double major, whatever courses you take in that double major will count as the 18 outside that major. Are you guys double majors, at least, are you?
I'm a statistics minor also, so I don't know how that would work, but
No, it's fine. If it's not a major, the 18 rule doesn't apply.
okay.
What about you, Ainsley?
I'm hoping to do the business ethics and society minor.
There, I don't think it would matter either. And you'll have to talk to Professor Hess about what would be appropriate for that. That would probably be the thing to do. But anyway, so you can count up your courses, all your common area requirements would count towards that 18. And as long as you got 18, then take as many econ courses as you want. I mean, if you can plot it out and know that by the time you graduate, you'll have 18. Because particularly if you want to go to graduate school, having a coterie of courses from LSE is not a bad thing. Other questions? Well, I'm very happy you guys came. I'm very grateful for Will for showing up and doing such a great job of giving us an impression of this opportunity. I also want to give you guys my phone number. So it's 617-610-3871. That's 617-610-3871. That's my cell. So it's become my office phone these days. So feel free to call me. You have my email address is bsmith@holycross.edu. So I'm happy to follow up with you. I'll just talk 1 minute about, or maybe a couple of minutes about the personal essay that you have to write. People are often a little bit traumatized by applying to study abroad because it re-triggers for them that traumatic experience of having to apply to colleges, and you're thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna get in, I'm gonna get a scholarship, will I get my first choice, will I get no choices, and it's really, I know it I remember it for myself, and I remember it with my 2 children, it's stressful. This should not be stressful, okay? One thing, you've already proved yourself by getting into Holy Cross, proved yourself again by doing extremely well academically here. And the other difference is you and I are on the same team. We want the same thing. I want you to go to LSE, and I want to work with you and help you in any way I can get there. So we just need to make sure that we don't view this too hard as something, traumatic. You have to get a letter of recommendation. It's 2 letters of recommendation, I believe. So be sure to ask your professor about those letters if they'll write for you before you put them down on the Holy Cross application. Because as soon as you put their name on the Holy Cross application, a letter gets sent to them or an email gets sent to them. And even if you know they're going to write for you, just give the courtesy of asking them first. Okay. So you got to do that. You got to pick your courses at LSE, which is not particularly difficult, and you've got to write an essay. Now, the essay is probably the most time consuming, but even that shouldn't take you more than a couple of hours, and then maybe a revision once I review it for you. The essay should be a narrative of who you are as a student. You're not doing that get into college, make myself cool and interesting and creative kind of thing. We're talking about you as a student of economics. What will you have done by the end of this year to prepare yourself to get to LSE? What are you going to do at LSE? And don't just make a laundry list of your courses, because that's going to be on your application, but say what you want to pursue. And then finally, the last piece here is, what is your experience in LSE going to prepare you to do when you get back to Holy Cross? So you need to make a narrative of who you are as a student, right? That's really important. And that should be about 2 pages, and then maybe another 3/4 of a page or something should be about who you are as a citizen of the community. What are your extracurricular activities? How do you want to incorporate those when you're in London? Are there things that LSE has that correspond to SPUD or whatever? And finish it off with that, okay? Another guideline, don't tell, you're writing this for LSA, so be sure not to use things like Montserrat, that they don't know what they are, or SPUD, as I just did, right? Just, you have to explain those things. And finally, you don't want to exude about how enthusiastic you are about and how much you love economics and how passionate you are about economics. You need to be concrete and demonstrate your passion. So when I read your essay, I need to be able to say, wow, Elias is passionate about economics, right? But if you tell me you're passionate, you're not telling me anything. You're not telling me why. And I don't know you, because you could even be lying, right? I don't know that. Or certainly over in LSE, they don't know that. So be concrete and whatnot. So that's just a rough thing about, take some time this weekend, just knock this thing out, right? It's not hard. You're not obligated to go if you decide you don't want to go. But if you know LSE is your top choice, and if you're qualified, it probably should be your top choice, unless you decide to go to Oxford, which has the same qualifications. So just knock this thing out. I'll help you with it. Once you submit your essay, we'll go over it together. It's an ongoing process. So don't be traumatized by this. Don't have any self-doubts. Our students compete with the students from Harvard and Yale and all the other places that Will mentioned, and do really well. So if you're doing well in the tough economics department here, you're tough enough for LSE, and don't be intimidated by it. You're going to take it by the bull by the horns over there and be really successful and have the experience of a lifetime. So get going on it. And if you have questions, call me and we'll work it out. Anything else? Nope. Well, if I could leave without cutting you guys off, I would, but I can't. But I'm sure Will would be happy to talk to you more if you have questions about things that you don't want to ask in front of me. I understand.
Yeah, for sure. I can put my email in the chat.
Okay.
Really fast. If you, there it is. If you look up just William Grimes, got to put the full name, unfortunately, in like Gmail, I'll pop up. So
okay,
always very happy to talk about abroad. That's all I want to talk about.
When I came back from Vienna, I went on a camping trip with my brother, older brother. And at some point he says, if you don't stop talking to me about Vienna, I'm going to bust your butt. It's that kind of experience. So you're going to love it, and stay in touch, folks. I don't want to lose you. Okay.